Hello everybody. Today I want to talk about the American elm tree. Um, First of all, this tree right here is an American elm tree. You can tell by several things, mostly by the leaves, obviously. As you can see here, if you feel them, they have a rough texture. But you can see that there's a lot of they got edges around the leaf that are kind of jagged, and it's alternate branched, which means you can see here the branches aren't aligned, which would make it opposite branched. So you have one branch, and you go down further, and then it's alternate branch. This is pretty typical of the bark you'd see on American elm. It's kind of got a grayish looking bark. As it gets older, it'll be much more furrowed in its look. So it have much deeper looking bark in between each section. This one here is probably about 8 years old. I planted this tree about 8 years ago, and obviously we can see which side is the north side of the tree because we got moss growing over here. I want to talk first of all about the history of this tree. This tree has a very, very interesting history behind it. The American elm tree was once one of the most sought after, beautiful, widely planted street trees in America. For a long time, every city planted them everywhere. I mean, it has so much appeal to it. It is a fast growing tree. It is a long lived tree. It doesn't make a mess. It doesn't blow over a lot when the wind comes. When you have storms, it's strong in ice and snow. So it's a very hardy tree. And for a long time, it lined America's streets. And then we had this awful disease called the Dutch elm disease that was brought over, obviously, from somewhere in Europe, in that area. It ravaged the American elm tree a great deal. It caused a lot of damage. The thing about it is the particular disease, that Dutch elm disease, it was targeting an elm tree that was one particular genetic background. And see, back then, almost all of the elm trees in this country came from that particular genetic background. They were grafts. They took this one pretty American elm tree, and they would take grafts off of it. They'd raise them up, and they'd sell them to other people. So they were all sharing the same genetic code, and so there was no resistance to it. So that when the Dutch elm disease came, it killed. There's no telling how many elm trees, and it just about wiped them out. So it's really interesting story. If you go to almost any city, major city, town, even small towns in America, you will have a street in that town called Elm Street, and that was the street that a lot of cities would line the streets with nothing but elm trees. They got this wonderful vase-like shape, you know. So it starts down low, and then it just, as you can see with this one here, starts down low, This is only about 8 years old, so it's still in its awkward stage. But it's eventually it's just going to go like this. And depending on how you planted it, if you planted it in a open area, it's gonna grow more lateral. If you planted it kind of in a woody area where there's competition, it's going to grow more up and then out. But it's going to outgrow its competitors a lot most of the time. This is a tree that outgrows other trees. It's not going to be outdone. This is a tree that can live potentially 300 years. So it lives a long time. People will say, if you go online and you read about the elm tree, a lot of people think that the elm tree is all but gone. Well, it's not. The elm tree is very abundant, at least in this part. And I should probably say this is eastern North Carolina where I live at. In this part of America, you can find the American elm tree growing abundantly wild. It's very abundant. So and a lot of times you'll see groves of them where there was one and it's spread. Now if you look at any type of forestry publications or nature publications, you will see that the elm tree in a mature forest setting likes to be accompanied by red maples. That's a common theme you'll see. And it's probably because of its ability to seed out. It seeds out in the spring, like the maple tree does. It's wind pollinated, so it doesn't have to have insects cross pollinating to seed out. The wind carries it. The wind carries the seeds. So that's something to think about. I don't see some trees will have a bunch of babies in your yard, and you'll see a lot of saplings that come from the main tree. I haven't seen that yet. I think this year it did seed out. I did notice the flowers on it, but I haven't, as of right now, I still haven't seen anything. Wildlife value. I'll always, anytime I do these videos, I love to talk about the wildlife value of trees. The elm tree has a great deal of wildlife value.